All right, so we want to solve for x. It's important that you think of what order you should be trying the different strategies in. The first thing you should try is to isolate x if there's only one x. That is the first thing you should. The reason we have the order is this takes care of the easier cases first. If it factors, then use the zero product property. Okay, 1x is easier than 2x's. That's why I do it first. How many x's do you see? 1. That means that you should be isolating x. Now that x is stuck inside the parentheses. So I need to undo the things outside the parentheses first. Minus 4, then divide by 2. So I get x minus 3 squared equals negative 2. The order matters. Okay, then I take the square root of both sides. And I get x minus 3 equals plus or minus square root negative 2. And then I stop. And I'm like, okay, I have a radical. Is that the way I want to leave my radical? No, it's not simplified. And so we're going to get, I'll just leave this one over here. X minus 3 equals plus or minus I root 2. That negative is really I root. The 2 is not a perfect square. That stays. And then I add 3 to both sides. These two things are not like terms, which is why I leave them separate. This is your solution. Okay. There wasn't a lot in your homework with parentheses, or is there questions about the order I just did that in? Yes. Got it? Okay. Is there only one x? Yes, means I will isolate the x. In this case, there's no parentheses, but there's a fraction. Okay, so I'm going to add the 1/3 to the other side. Guys, when I'm doing this, this is the order I'm considering. I'm doing PEMDAS backwards when I'm trying to solve. That's why I add and then divide. Okay, square root. Right? Okay, x equals plus or minus square root of 1/3. Is this radical where I want to leave it? No. Okay, so then I need to rationalize with the multiplicative identity. Okay, x equals plus or minus root 3 over 3. It's not necessarily the isolating that throws us off. It's did I actually simplify my answer? Okay. Number 3. Is there 1x? No, there's not. Okay, try factoring it. 1 and 3, 1 and 2. Okay, so they're both prime numbers, means it should be pretty quick because there's only 2 choices. So I'm just going to write down this, and then I'm going to try my 2 and my 1, which I think go like this. 3 and 2, negative 3, and positive 2 add to negative 1. Okay, then I use my zero product property, which says that if I multiply two things to 0, one of them will be 0. One or both, doesn't matter. And then I continue solving for x. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
What was the way you were writing the answers on the...
Oh, it's technically set notation. See the curly braces? x such that x equals. So there's two ways to write it because the question said solve for x. They assume that this is the set of the answers.
And what did VR mean?
Double root. Same factor twice. We're not really going to actually classify until later.
Is it fine if we just write x equals?
This is all I expect right now. The vocab is because we start adding it later.
So on the quiz today, do you want?
Just x equals, that's all I want. Yeah. Okay. Questions on 1, 2, or 3? Make sure that you can simplify your answers. What about 4? Did you do the quadratic formula?
No.
No, you did the other thing. Don't tell me that yet. All right.
Prime.
It's prime, guys. Is there more than one x?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't isolate. Can you factor it? No. No, it doesn't even factor with a calculator. All right, it's prime. So now what? Okay, this is part 3 of our solving. Part 3 says we do this skill called complete the square. You may have wanted to say quadratic formula, but you do quadratic formula in Algebra 1. We do complete the square in Algebra 2 because it has a lot of different applications. And so today we're going to learn how to complete the square, but it has to come in phases. All right, so we're going to learn how to solve this question here, but we're going to have to develop the skill first. All right, so if you did this on the whiteboard, now get out your notes. We're going to start the complete the square lesson with the purpose of being able to solve this question.
What was the answer?
2 plus or minus root 3. Okay, so here are your notes for today's lesson. 3.4. How do I complete the square? Okay. Part 1. We're going to talk about what a perfect square trinomial is. Right? 2 parts. And I'm going to give you a couple ways to do a perfect square trinomial. I will give you the formula way. I will also give you the visual, right? Like a graphic organizer for complete the square. Okay, vocab, perfect square trinomial. First, a trinomial is 3 terms. A perfect square trinomial is this. That is a perfect square trinomial. Notice the perfect squares. Okay? Perfect square here, perfect square here. It factors like this. Now, when we were just factoring, we still did the multiply, add, and we guessed and checked a little bit. Now we're going to go a little bit further, and we're going to figure out how to go back and forth between these two things. So part 1 is identifying your perfect square trinomials and making a perfect square trinomial. All right? So, find the missing term to make a perfect square trinomial. First one. Okay, so find the blank so that this will be a perfect square trinomial, which means that I get the same factor twice. That's what a perfect square trinomial is. Same factor twice. And so I'm going to do a visual over here. Bless you. Okay. Now this is to represent our foiling. Have any of you ever foiled with a box? Okay. Maybe. Has anybody done a Punnett square?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're thinking of here. I'm going to fill in my box with my terms. I'm going to put my x squared here. Now, this is for first, outer, inner, last. It's just a graphic organizer for foiling, but it really helps us match up some of the vocab. All right, my outer and my inner, they have to be the same. That is the requirement. Outer and inner have to be equal for a perfect square trinomial. Have to be. So what should I put in my two boxes? Somebody else. Because you already know it. Why did you pick 3x? It's correct. Why did you pick 3x? Because that's how you get to 6x, adding the same thing twice. You have to pick the same number. Okay, so we split the middle term evenly. Split evenly. All right, here comes the Punnett square part. X times x gives me x squared. We're multiplying our rows and our columns here. X times what gives me 3x? 3. Okay, x times what gives me 3x? I like to include my signs here. I know 3 is positive. I want to see plus 3. What is missing? Guys, this is why it's called complete the square.
9.
9. Because now I have a whole square. Literally, this is why it's called completing the square. Because I'm missing this little yellow box. And so the 9 goes here. There's something called completing the cube, which is 3D. We don't do it. We don't do it, but there is something called completing the cube, which is 3D.
Hey, can we do complete the tesseract?
No. All right. I need you to be convinced that this and this are equal. Notice that this over here actually gives me the foiling, so I can check it. X plus 3 times x plus 3 is x squared, 3x, 3x, and 9. You have to be convinced that this perfect square trinomial factors to this. I don't want to see extra work on your paper. You need to have this part down. All right, let's do it again. X squared, let's put a negative. Let's try minus. Well, it gets a little trickier. Let's try minus 8x plus this. Okay, I'm just going to do a visual because it helps me. We will scale back the visual as we get better at it. Okay, somebody different. What goes in my outer and my inner box? Ann? Yes, minus 4x. Okay, so visually I split it evenly. So we're going to start developing the formula. So I take my middle number, just the number, and I split it in half. And that gives me minus 4. That's my outer and my inner, because together they make minus 8. Okay, what goes in the blank? the part that completes the square, because that is the part that is missing. Somebody else, what would be the yellow box? Lily? Positive 16 or negative? Positive, agreed. Squared. Squaring that number is what goes in the yellow box. Do I need to write? Not really. You guys can do it. The box is just a visual to help you see why I'm halving it and why I'm squaring it.
So basically, you're just squaring the middle. You're dividing the middle by 2 and then squaring that.
Correct. But now it's not so much as a memorizing as a, I have to half it because I got 2 boxes and I square it. Yes.
Would the outside part be -4?
They would be. Oh, yes, sorry. Just -4, you're correct. Okay, so when I turn it into the perfect square, the binomial squared, I do have a minus because of the negative middle term. Because this times that is actually that trinomial. I expect you to be able to foil that in your head, guys. Don't miss the middle term. Okay. X squared. All right. Yes. I did give you a number that's not even. This is where the visual, we're going to scale back our visual and we're going to introduce the formula. First, things don't have to be integers. Just throw integers out the window, guys. You've got to be able to do fractions. Give me an improper fraction. Don't use a decimal. That does not reduce. All right, so when you square a fraction, you just square the top number and just square the bottom number. And so we actually get 9/4. That's it. No. Because they don't divide by the same number. I know you're like, oh, they're perfect squares. Nope. You can't just square root them. It doesn't work when there's no equals. Okay. Minus. I like the visual until you really get good at factoring perfect square trinomials. The visuals help. All right. What goes? Somebody new. What goes in my parentheses? Yes. All right. Okay, here we go. 5/2. Okay. Check it. Make sure you are convinced that this actually factors like that. I need you to be able to go from here to here without extra work. Okay? You need to convince yourself that this line and this part, that they are equal without doing extra steps. You do the extra steps now, because when we move forward, you have to make that leap without extra work. Okay, 4. Alyssa, when you're ready, you can put 4 up. Okay? Yeah, we all made them. Okay. Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. That was gonna. You can come get a piece of candy. All right. Drew said, "Can't that also be -8?" Yeah, but if this is a -8, look at what changes with the factor. So that middle sign actually tells you what the sign is supposed to be in the parentheses. Okay, 5 was right here, okay? And then 6, Alex, you can come up. Could be either, yeah. I would choose a plus. There's just two answers. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to write up the box that matches 5 because I saw a lot of people kind of questioning what to go there. Yes? Okay. All right, the last two were a little bit tricky. Okay, so let's investigate why they worked out the way they did. All right, see if I can make a box fit in here. I think I can do it. Okay, here is my box for 5. Now, 4x squared. We didn't really put a number in front, but it is a perfect square. So if 4x squared goes here, I need a 2x and a 2x. It has to be the same factor. That's the whole point. Which means I need to 20. So I know this has to be a 10 because I have to split it evenly. But 2 times 5 is what gets me the 10. And so it's not quite halved and squared. You have to account for that beginning number. And so it ends up being 25. Now, the one thing, it's not a plus. It's a minus because of the minus. Okay? Yeah. He had it right on his paper, guys. Okay. So for this one, 9x squared, let's say you prefer this format. You're like, okay, same factor twice. 3x and 3x, 5 and 5. That is the choice. That is it. Now, plus or minus, except I wrote a plus here, so I was looking for the positive. And so plus plus, 15 and 15 is 30. Okay. Can you come up with the formula, right? Now we should understand how to make it work. This is what goes in your notes, right here. And you can pick 1 or 2 examples to copy in as that goes underneath of this. Your choice. For candy. Can somebody tell me in a formula kind of way, if this is my expression, 1x squared plus bx plus c, how do you find c to make this a perfect square trinomial? All right. Is anybody who doesn't have candy have it before I ask Gabe? All right, Gabe, what is it?
Okay, so I think it would be e divided by 2 in parentheses.
Okay.
Then square.
Yes. Okay, so you can grab another piece if you'd like. Can somebody else tell me how do I turn it into the perfect square trinomial factor? All right, Daniel.
X plus B over 2.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, guys, that's the formula. It's a little hard to read, so let me just uncover it for you. All right, this is what you need in your notes. We've now developed the formula with some practice so that you understand a little bit more of where it's coming from. All right. Now we are going to solve using this skill. Notice that this has a 1 in front. Okay? Notice that I now gave you the algebraic formula, not the box graphic organizer. They both work. Okay? Ready?
No.
Oh, that's right. You need time. Okay. All right. My flowchart says first, 1x, isolate x. Do you have 1x in this expression of this equation? No. Okay. Second, can you factor this? No. I have 1 and 2 and 1 and 1. There's no way I'm going to get to 8. So you're like, oh, well, now what? Okay. The last thing and the more complicated way to solve is completing the square. That's why you do it last. You try to catch all the other cases before you get to the longest and most complicated method. So, let's complete the square. How do I complete the square? Divide by a. I need to have a 1x squared in front. So notice that it's a 2. This doesn't work if there's a 2 in front. So property of equality, divide both sides by 2. Yeah, I know it didn't divide evenly, guys. You're gonna have to do it. Okay. Set it up. I have to set up completing the square. Here's what the setup looks like. The missing C value that we are now confident in being able to fill in. Right, that 1/2, it was not the number I was looking for. We just move it over. Okay. Set up plus C. Now, I can't just add something to the left side of an equation. I need to also add it to the right side. Property of equality. If you want to add a number to the left side, you're going to need to add it to the right side. All right, guys. Fill in the blank. What goes in the blank to make it a perfect square trinomial? Lucas? A 4, yes. You can come have a piece. A 4. A 4. Okay, set it up. Actually, add C or find C. Okay. Set up your adding and actually find it. You like to draw a box? Draw a box. Okay. Factor. Factor the left side. Because it's a perfect square trinomial, it factors very nicely. This is why we learn how to do the skill before we use the skill. Okay. Don't get sucked down into the arithmetic, guys. Add the two numbers. You can do it. Okay. Now I'm actually ready to solve for x. How many x's do you see? 1. Isolate x. Square root both sides. Is that how I want to leave my radical?
Yes. Ew, no.
No.
That's disgusting.
No. Okay. So, right, there's a lot of things that you can't forget. Like, how do I simplify my radical? How do I rewrite it? In this particular case, there's no perfect square, so I'm just going to rationalize it. Okay. Root 14 over 2. I'm writing a lot of steps down here. Some of this I would probably combine. Because right now, I'm just back into the how do I isolate x. I do my operations. Add 2. This is your answer. Okay. You can think of this as a 3-step process. Okay? Divide by a, so you get a 1 in front. 2/3. Set up your perfect square and factor it. 4. Finish isolating x. No, it doesn't actually matter what comes first. Notice that they are not like terms, which is why they are staying separate. I'm going to jot down your quadratic formula real quick. opposite b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I prefer to write my fractions separately. Guys, this is why I put my number first.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it is actually the quadratic formula in a non-formula way. Notice that there wasn't that much reducing. The quadratic formula typically has a lot of reducing that goes along with it. Completing the square typically does not. Right? Even though it's its own set of steps, typically has a lot less reducing than the quadratic formula. Okay, we're going to do one more together, then we'll start doing some on our whiteboards for practice to see where we're at. I'll even be nice. X squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. Is there one x?
No.
No. Can you factor it? Okay, well, can I factor it? No. That leaves me with complete the square.
Nice.
Okay. Oh, I already have a 1 in front. Set up the plus c. Yeah, if I can factor, there's no way you would ever complete the square, right? That we do easiest to hardest in our flow chart. First, isolating x. Second, factoring. If I can't factor, this is where you're left with. Okay. Divide by 1. Set up your c value. And factor it. All right. Show of hands, who knows what goes in the blank? How many of you know what goes in the blank? Yes, 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 yay. Okay. All right, Lily, what goes in my blank?
I think it's 3.
Trish? 9. 9 goes in the blank. 3 goes in the factor. Okay. Factor. Solve. All right. X by itself. It's not a long process once you figure out what to do, but you got to understand the steps. Otherwise, it feels like you're memorizing a lot. Because -4 plus 9 is 5. Right? See that? The setup step is important. I got to move this over because it's not the right number. Okay? I will square root both sides and add 3. It should be a 30 when you rationalize. Okay. That one. Okay. Good question. B over 2 squared. Quietly move forward. It's that formula. How do I complete the trinomial? Half of b squared. So it's -2, half it, and square it. Property of equality happens on both sides. Okay? So step 1, divide by a. Step 2, add your c. Step 3, factor it. Now, when you factor it, it looks like this. Okay, so now I'm going to add these things up over here. 13 over 3 plus 3 over 3, negative 10 over 3. It would be I root 30.
Oh, yeah.
But yes. Okay, next step, square root, plus or minus. Okay, so now I'm looking at this, and I'm like, that's not how I want to leave my radical. Okay, so I'm going to multiply by root 3 over root 3. Okay, there you go. Okay. All right, guys, here's your last question. Okay, there you go. I think so. Okay. Keep working. Okay, quietly. It's highlighted in yellow. Highlighted in yellow. Right? I'm putting fractions in particular places. See if you can do it.
I just have that going on over and over again in my head.
Okay. Quietly.
Oh, we're doing that?
Yep, yellow one. It doesn't really get harder besides slightly bigger numbers. Alright guys, focus.
Why?
You can. I know, but like, how are you gonna do it? You can do it. Alright.
They definitely
Oh, okay. Use improper fractions, don't use decimals.
Darn.
This is a non-calculator thing.
Oh wait, I put this in back.
Oh, it's not
What's one point that's unprecedented?
Here you go. There you go. Alright, there's your answer so you can check. Okay, here we go. Ready, Evan? Did you divide by the 2? Okay. How do you find C? Okay, so how do you find C? C equals, if you want to reduce that is, okay? How does it factor? Like this. Okay, so try that. How do you get the I? It's not 5/4. It's 25/4. It's the same number. Half it, square it. Yeah, okay. So you get this. 5. How do you half a number? Times by 1/2.
It'd be negative.
Yeah? Okay. Which makes this 5/4 squared, which makes it 25/16. Yep. Yep. Okay, check your work, guys. The part that everyone got the question with no fractions, right. Which means now you're struggling because it's a fraction, not because you don't know how to do it. And I suggest actually dividing the 2 because we're not factoring right now. We are dividing. So square root is get 5/7 over 4. 16 squared. Yeah. 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 Okay. Because I'm alright. Square root, I'm not doing square root. I'm not factoring. Therefore, I'm just going to divide the leading coefficient and add it to the I'm actually dividing this side by 2. The reason we'll do 5 is because just get rid of it. I don't need it. It complicates it.
It's gone.
You have
Yeah, I got it. I put it up. Okay, I got it right. Right. If you get it, guys, move on to your homework. Square root of 16 also. Yeah?
Stop it.
Oh, I mean, it is 5/6. Improper fractions is better. Because when you square fractions and square root fractions, you just do the top and you're done.
You can't get it off. Did you do that? No.
Never mind. Yes, you're right. Complex fractions. You do square it. What do you mean? Okay, so alright guys, you are moving on to your homework worksheet, or you are studying for the quiz you're going to take later on solving, which is solving by factoring and solving square roots. Which is not the stuff we're doing, guys, it's the stuff from last class, which is worksheet 5. Worksheet 5. Yes.
What's -2 plus 25? There's a rocket.
Yes. Set up our numbers. Yes. Now we factor. Then we factor. Okay. And then you continue. Now, use it. Add those out.
There's no. You're making my learning
Just asking you for give me another 2.
Everyone in the class just what? And then the word destroyer.
All of those three words All right, guys, you are on to your homework for a few minutes. You have 108, so really like 110 is when we're going to start the quiz. So you can do completing the square right now. You can look over your worksheet 5. But we're going to start our quiz in about 5 minutes. So you can start getting cleaned up and ready and look over what you need to.
Can I go to the restroom?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I know.